I've got some great news for you. Money is not your money problem. Money is not my money problem. Money's not your money problem. If you have money problems, you don't have money problems because of money. You have money problems because of something else. And I'm going to show you what those something else's are in this video. So I'm going to give you a methodology for making better financial decisions, because I'm going to tell you something. If you make emotional decisions around money, you will be broke. Did I say that too fast? If you make your financial decisions based on emotions, you will be broke. Because here's what I found out as an entrepreneur. Sometimes I don't feel like working. So guess what I do? I work anyway. Sometimes I feel like I've got the greatest idea in the world and I want to abandon everything and just run after this great idea. That's a terrible thing to do. Man, I just saw this thing and I really want to buy it. But if I buy it, I won't be able to pay my employees on Friday. Terrible idea. You can't make decisions, you can't make money decisions based on emotions and get rich. I mean, you can make money decisions based on emotion, but you can't get rich. So you have to learn how to use your mind. So what do you use your mind to do? This is where the wealth is created. You must learn true perceptions, or learn to perceive the truth. You have to learn true perceptions. You don't see things the way they are. You see things the way you are. Did I say that too? I'm going to say that again. You don't see things the way they are. You see things the way you are. And what's really fascinating is, like, this is a scientific fact. This is how the algorithm knows what to feed you on social media. They feed you things you already like, already believe, already think. And so you have to learn how to use your mind to learn true perceptions. And because most people were miseducated in the miseducational, misdirectional system, most people don't like to do what they think learning is, but that's not actually what learning is anyway. So most people don't want to read because they were forced to read stuff that wasn't interesting, so they think reading is boring. And so you have to learn to love truthful perspectives. You have to fall in love with truth instead of attempting to make true that which you love. And then you leverage tried and true priorities. What does that mean? You make your priorities based on your perception of truth from a perspective of truth. You don't make your financial decisions. You prioritize your financial decisions based on truth. So, for instance, I fly private. I can afford to buy a jet. I'd love to have a jet. I just don't fly enough. It doesn't make sense. So I would have my priorities out of order if I did that, right? So, for instance, I have a team of about 15 people, and all of that, the people on my team are all valuable. They all serve a valuable function in the team. However, when it comes to the work that they do, see, I don't like when employers are looking at hiring people, we think about how much money is this person going to make us for the company. When people get a job, they're focused on how much is this job going to pay me. Are y'all tracking? When the employee gets their vision in line with the employer, and not just for my organization, but all organizations, then generally they will make more money because they will be focused on things that make the company money, which makes them more valuable to the company. Okay. So I started the company, and we're an educational company, and I'm a consultant, and so therefore, like, the work that I do brings in most of the money, but like without the supporting work, I'd have a whole lot more work to do. Does that make sense? So I could live a much more lavish lifestyle than I live. I could have nicer cars, I could live in a much nicer house in a much nicer neighborhood, and I could take way more vacations than I take and all of that. But if I did that, I wouldn't have the ability to make sure that when trouble comes, we don't have to lay anybody off, right? And here's, like, even though I'm pretty sure I make more money than everybody in our company. I'm pretty sure I do. But even though I make more money per dollar-wise than everybody in our company, percentage-wise, based on the amount of money every worker brings in, I make the least. I make the smallest percentage of the money that I bring in of anybody in my company. I want you to think about that. Why? Because my priorities are in the right place. I didn't just start this business so I can be okay. One of the reasons I really resisted hiring people was because I wanted to give people a job and then make them think they were going to be able to pay their bills and then have to lay them off because I couldn't figure out how to make it work well enough. Okay, so anyway. So you have to prioritize your finances based on reality, not based on fantasy. Like, if you're always looking at Instagram and YouTube and if you're looking at Instagram and YouTube and X and Facebook and TikTok, and you're looking at how other people are living their lives, you're comparing the best part of their life with the reality of your life and thinking you're not doing well. And so what you'll do is you'll make financial decisions you'll buy things that you don't need and that you can't afford to impress people that you don't know or don't like and will never meet. It doesn't make any sense. You have to prioritize in your finances. I am going to do the thing that makes the most sense, and I'm going to do the things that make the most sense first, so that if I don't have time to get to something, I don't get to the things that make the least amount of sense. And in business, if it don't make no dollars, it don't make no sense. Okay, y'all tracking. Okay, so I'm not going to charge extra for that. Okay, so you have the mind. What is the mind? See, a lot of people think the mind is the brain. But the mind has a conscious level and a subconscious level. I like to think of the conscious mind as the manual mind. It's the part that you control with effort, consciously. You're aware of the fact that you're making it do something. The subconscious mind I like to call the automatic mind. Can I share some amazing news that I've discovered? All of the results that you're producing in your life, you're producing on the automatic mind level, the subconscious level. Like if you are like succeeding wildly right now, you're succeeding wildly because your subconscious mind is programmed to succeed wildly. If you're struggling right now, you are struggling because your subconscious mind is programmed to struggle. It's like setting a thermostat. It's like set it and forget it. Here's when I discovered this. I was talking to one of my coaching clients. This was probably 25, maybe even 30 years ago. I was talking to one of my clients. I said, how's business? They said, I'm really trying. And it hit me so like off guard. I wasn't expecting that answer. I'm really trying. And then I thought to myself, I'm not really trying. And I'm sure I was making at least tens of thousands of dollars a month, at least. And I'm not really trying. So I called my coach, my mentor. I called Jerry Clark. I said, Jerry, are you trying to make money? He literally started laughing. And I don't know if you know Jerry Clark or not. He's like, no, I'm not trying. Right? And I realized people who are succeeding aren't trying to succeed any more than people who are struggling are trying to struggle. In both cases, it's automatic. What? In both cases, it's automatic. So if you are succeeding, you're succeeding automatically. If you're struggling automatically. So the question then becomes, how do I turn on my automatic success mechanism and turn off my automatic failure mechanism? Isn't that the question? And what's interesting is you have to use words. You have to use your mind. But in order to use your mind, to reprogram your mind, you must use words. Why? Because you can speak without thinking. How many of you ever said, oh man, I should have thought before I said that, right? You can speak without thinking, but you can't think without words. So even though communication is the second highest level of value, it may be the most essential level because without it, you can't even have imagination. Right? Jim Rohn said, he said, and I got this from Jim Rohn, so if it's not true, blame it on him. But I think it makes sense. He said, some organization did research with a bunch of inmates in prison. He said, and they found something that they weren't looking for. They found out that all of these inmates had a very small vocabulary. And then he said, words are not just a communication tool. They are the window through which we see the world. He said, if you have a very small vocabulary, maybe you don't need a very large space to live in. And then I started thinking about how if you have a larger vocabulary, you have more tools with which to express yourself. If you have a larger vocabulary, you have more tools with which to think. And so learning more words, increasing your vocabulary, increases your capacity to communicate, and it increases your capacity to think. How cool is that? What if every time you read a book, what if you decided there's never going to be a day of my life that goes by that I don't read some pages in some book or listen to some pages in some audiobook? What if you decided that? And what if you decided that every time you came across a word that you didn't know, you'd look it up? And you'd get so good with language that you could promulgate your esoteric cogitations and articulate your superficial sentimentalities with amicable and philosophical and psychological observations. And you could beware of platitudinous ponderosities and demonstrate a clarified conciseness with comprehensibleness and no jejune bafflement. What if you could do that? Do what, Myron? What if you could say what you mean and not use big words? Because that's what all that stuff meant. What if you had enough tools in your toolbox, in your word toolbox, that you could think more clearly and speak more clearly and not always be misunderstood and persuade people who it would be in their best interest for you to persuade them, and persuade people for whom it would be in your best interest to persuade them, just because you had a bigger vocabulary. Make sure your mind is over your money. You make sure you prioritize your financial decisions in the right way. And then you use your mouth to overcome the tragedy that is ambiguity. Ambiguity is a tragedy. Ambiguity is a tragedy. What's ambiguity? Lack of clarity. When you communicate, you didn't say what you thought you said what they actually heard. My daughter always says, Dee Dee, I got to give her credit because it's one of the best quotes I've ever heard. The biggest mistake in communication is thinking that it happened. Tony Robbins said, your communication is the response you get. So you didn't say, Myron Golden says, since I'm quoting people, might as well quote me. Okay. Myron Golden says that you didn't say what you thought you said what they actually heard. So if you're going to overcome, use your mouth to overcome the tragedy that is ambiguity, what you have to do is you have to perceive how the words that you're saying are being received as you say them. So communicating with somebody is not just talking to them or talking at them, but it's talking to them and then paying attention to the response you're getting to see if you conveyed the message that you thought you conveyed, or did you convey something else. Oh, and here's what happens. If they don't have to say something. They just have to, like, what does this look? See, to me, that's disgust. What does this look? That's confused. What does this look? I don't believe you. Right? Are you tracking? And so what if you became so audience aware, whether you're talking to an audience of 1 or an audience of 100,000, what if you became so audience aware that as you're communicating to people, you are reading their energy at the same time? Because here's what I found out about people. Sometimes they lie. Unless you're a sociopath or a psychopath, you can lie with your words, but your energy always tells the truth. So I listen to people's energy while they're listening to my words, so I can perceive if I've overcome the tragedy that is ambiguity. I didn't make myself clear. So that's number one. So you overcome the tragedy of ambiguity, and then you optimize the technology of articulation. Technology of articulation? Words are technology? Sure they are. Have you ever played Pictionary? Does it take you longer to convey your message when you're playing Pictionary than it does when you're just having a conversation with somebody? Why? Because technology is anything that makes an activity easier. Well, guess what? When you go into a job interview and you've not mastered the technology of articulation, what happens is sometimes you don't get the job, not because you're not good at the thing, but just because you're not good at telling them how good you are at the thing. If you're an entrepreneur, sometimes you don't get the deal, not because you're not the best at doing the thing, but because you're not the best at communicating that you're the best at doing the thing. Being the best at doing the thing without being the best at communicating you're the best at doing the thing, you are going to be an under-monetized asset. So you have to really get good at talking. But I don't like to talk. Okay, get good at it anyway. Because you definitely like to get paid. See, optimize the technology of articulation by reading more. So when you overcome the tragedy of ambiguity and you optimize the technology of articulation, then and only then can you offer timely answers. What does the scripture say? A word spoken in due time, how good it is. Wow. Now I get it. Now I get it when I read that King Solomon, he wrote 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. By the way, it's way more work to do this, but it's worth way more than the work it is. Okay. And so your mind, you get control over your mind by learning true perspectives, learning true perceptions, loving truthful perspectives, and then leveraging tried and true priorities. And then you optimize your mouth with, you overcome the tragedy that is ambiguity. You optimize the technology of articulation. You offer timely answers. And then motivation. What's motivation? That's speaking to the heart level. So notice the mind is the imagination level. The mouth is the communication level. The motives, those are the unification level. That's the heart. Do you realize when your mind and your heart are in alignment, that's when you have the most power? When your mind and heart are not in alignment, that's when you have the least power. But one of the things you have to do is you have to learn how to make your mind recruit your heart to pull in the direction that it does. Because if it doesn't, right? So I have an idea, but I'm not feeling it. And so because I'm not feeling it, I have to make myself feel like doing the thing so that I will do it. Now here's what happens. Here's what most people do. They feel like it. And so what they do is they'll recruit their mind to come pull in the same direction as their heart, and then they both end up in a ditch, because when the blind leads the blind, they both end up in a ditch, and your heart is blind. So what do I do when it comes to my motives? So I talked about my mind, I talked about my mouth. Now I'm talking, what do I do when it comes to my motives? Be suspicious of your passions. Be suspicious, not suspicion. Be suspicious of your passions. Like, which passions? All of them. Just know that your heart, your desires, the drive of your life is going to have a desire to lead you in the wrong direction. It's why people commit adultery. It's why people commit murder. It's why people rob banks. And they'll logically justify this bad feeling through this concept called rationalization. They'll rationalize. What does rationalize mean? I feel like doing something, so I let my heart tell my mind rationalize. Be suspicious of your passions. Like the more, like if you have this really strong desire to do something, put it on the back burner. And then go evaluate it logically to see if it makes sense. Because when emotions go up, intelligence goes down. Then once you've become suspicious of your passions, then you become systematic in your pursuits. How do I become systematic in my pursuits? I make my decisions in my head. And then I make my desires desire the thing that my head desire the thing that my head decided on. Most people are terrible at making decisions. Most people make choices and think the choice was a decision. Decide, de, Latin root over from, side to cut. When you make a decision, you cut yourself off from every other possibility. But when you make a choice, choose just means pick one. So you pick something, and then when you don't feel like it anymore, you pick something else. And when you don't feel like that anymore, you pick something else. You don't feel like that anymore, you don't pick something else. Like, isn't that what people at the gym do? They don't work out because they don't feel like it. I didn't work out yesterday, and last night it's like 7:30. Oh no, we ain't going to bed. You didn't earn sleep today, baby. We fixing to push it. So I made myself work out. I made myself work out until I was in pain. Why? Because it's going to make me stronger. And stronger feels worse at first. That's a poem, I know them. Okay, stronger feels worse at first, but it feels better after a while. Okay. So, become systematic in your pursuits, and then be substantive in your persistence. Once you make a decision to do something, regardless of whether you feel like doing it, do it anyway. How many of y'all tracking? See, I decided that just because I'm getting older doesn't mean I have to get more tired. Just because I'm getting older doesn't mean I have to get weaker. Just because I'm getting older doesn't mean I have to get out of shape. No, they don't have to go together. They only go together because people are following their heart. Okay, y'all tracking. And then, last thing we're going to do, the implementation is our methodologies, our methods. Discover more efficient methods. And then you develop effective methods. What does that mean? Efficient means I'm using the least amount of energy to produce the result. Effective means I'm producing the greatest result I can produce when I do the thing. So you develop effective methods. So you develop methods that are hyper effective. Okay? And then you deploy effort in your methods that you've discovered and developed. So you deploy those methods out into the marketplace, and then they will work. So what happens when you discover efficient methods? You develop effective methods, and then you deploy effort in those methods. Here's what happens. You become one of the best in the world in your arena. Because almost nobody does that. In any arena. Most people do just enough to do just enough. They become okay at being okay. It's like I talk about when I talk about Price's Law. Almost everybody is willing to do enough to be one of the mediocre many. But only a handful of people in any arena are willing to do what it takes to become one of the fantastic few. If you just pick an arena and decide, I'm going to go all in at becoming the best in this arena, make sure it's an arena that's worth being the best in. But if you do that, like, you don't want to become the best in the world at thumb wrestling, right? Like, make sure it's worthwhile, and then pursue that arena, and before you know it, what's going to happen? When you become the best of the best in your arena, the world will be the path to your door. I hope this mind over money mastery lesson was helpful. By the way, mind, subconscious, automatic mind, conscious, manual mind. Money is nothing more than a certificate of value created for someone other than yourself. Why do we have money? We have money because we created value for somebody other than ourselves, and they paid us money. And people who provide value are only willing to provide value to people who provided value to someone else. That's why when I go to Eddie V's to eat dinner, I have to be able to prove to them that I served enough people for them to bring me some food. And then when they bring me some food, I give them my certificates. And then they got certificates to go pay the people that serve them. Okay, what is mastery? Mastery is your ability to execute effortlessly without the use of conscious resources. Imagine being so good at using your mind and your mouth that to you it feels almost effortless. But to the people who want to come by and plagiarize you, for the people who want to come by and steal your content, they don't even have any place to put it. Become that person, and your life will change. Become a mind over money master. I guarantee you, you'll be glad you did.